Hi, how you doing everyone? So today we're going to talk about tendering. So this actually is a topic that came out of a podcast previously. If you remember the one, Getting Business Over the Line, somebody contacted us via email and asked the questions about how do you get tenders over the line and going through the tendering process, which is a little bit different to the normal proposals that you would do and send proposals, and maybe like what we talked about in the previous episode with pricing and moving the pricing about for negotiation. Tendering is a little bit different because you're given basically a brief, and you've got to kind of go and get that brief and get some kind of scoring points on it as well. So I think it's a really good topic to talk about today, as we've both got experience in tendering, winning tenders, doing lots of tenders and doing lots of bids, and I think it would be really worthwhile for us to share our expertise in that. So starting us off, John, you want to tell me a bit of background on tendering with you and what your kind of thoughts are on tendering?
Yeah, to do it. So I think that tendering is a great way of getting business. It probably plays more into an established business, stronger. So in tendering, there's this thing about having 3 years books. Now that's not to rule out people from doing tendering. There's lots of ways of doing it. You can form a consortium, which could be like me, you and another couple of companies all barrel in together to win a tender. I've done that with Digital Boost over the years, so that tender goes under NS Design.
Yep.
And I'm basically a consultant that's subcontracted into that package, and then I strengthen it. So I strengthen the software and e-commerce side, but it helps win the tender overall.
Yeah.
And then we all share in the proceeds of the tender. But there's other ways you can also do, like you take the lead on a project, but you subcontract in another company. You can do it where literally another company wins the bid, and then off the back of it, they do their own sort of proposals, if you will, for elements of it. So it works quite well, but I think one of the big things that probably cover off quite early in the episode is the difference between tendering and proposals. So it's like, what is the difference? To me, it's I need to go and run around and find business, and then sometimes I need to write a proposal to win that business and get it over the line. The thing that's interesting to me about tenders is these are already opportunities. Like, these are things with budget assigned against them. So imagine a utopia where you could have unlimited marketing contracts that all have budgets. So it's not we'll know when we see the price if we could have a budget. It's literally, we have set aside £160,000, we've set aside £800,000, 20 grand, 50 grand, and so on. The excitement when I found out about that kind of stuff was immense, because I'm thinking, wait, this is an infinite pool of opportunities that are in specialist areas, and if I just stick to what I know, like web design, web apps, e-learning, that type of stuff, I could do quite well for this. So that's the way I kind of view a tender, where it's the opportunities already defined, because almost it's like a spec document. They're telling you how you apply for it, so the format of the proposal, so you know what to write in the proposal. They're being quite transparent about the price. They won't tell you the price, but they'll give you the kind of range often, or you kind of know roughly just based on where it's been published what kind of size it is. And then beyond that, you also know that not a lot of people are going to go forward for that. So you might actually be like one of 13 people that are bidding for that contract. So if you come up with a good package, you've got a good chance of winning that. Yeah. And it'll be someone like the NHS, the MOD, decent sized like kind of companies like the Forestry Commission, that kind of stuff, and you'll see it on agencies. Like, I can tell agencies that tender just through having a wee shifty through their portfolios. Yeah. So you're like, NHS is a common one, massive organisation, but you can kind of tell who does it and who doesn't. But in our industry, there's loads that don't. Yeah. You do it though, so I'm interested to see, like, how did you first come into tendering? What's your kind of thoughts on it?
Yeah, so tendering, I think tendering is great, but also an absolute pain in the bum as well. There's the two sides to it. I definitely think so. Tendering is very different to proposals, where a proposal is very much you can use it as a sales tool, and you can say whatever you want to say within your proposal and throw in any case study you want to kind of throw in. Whereas a tender for me is almost like a university or college assignment, and you get asked specific questions.
Yep.
And these questions are really kind of hard to understand it sometimes. And I find sometimes these questions, like, what are they asking for here? and you have to kind of answer it in the best possible way, because the person that gets the highest score in the tender is the one that wins the tender.
That's right, yeah.
So it's the person that gets the highest grade. So I do think it's very similar to like a university type thing, and that's the way to kind of approach it, is you're answering like the questions on that. So it really is, every tender that I've done has been very different and wanted sort of different things as well. There are things that you can make repeatable, but generally the questions are a little bit different, and I think if you try and treat it like a proposal where it's the same sort of thing, you'll generally never win it. I mean, I had a tender one at just kind of tail end of last year, and it took me a lot of time. It really did take me a lot of time to build the tender and spend time on it, getting the right type of case studies in, really going in depth. Like when they were asking a question, it was really going in depth and answering that to the best of everything that we could do and what we could offer into it. So you were almost like, and I'm like writing essays basically. So
about that kind of stuff.
Tender. So when they talk about like, a job as a bid writer, you can see why this is a job, because it takes up so much time when you're actually doing that. And if you were going to get lots of tenders and keeping on doing it, you could easily employ somebody to do that.
Yeah, of course.
You've got to write that content continuously.
One of the companies I'm building just now, we have bid writers coming in and roughly about 2.5 years into the build, and it's potentially for that is by then that's when you've got your kind of like you're approaching your 3 years books. So then bringing in the bid writers, but up until then it'll probably be me. What you said there is bang on with so like you can't really kind of boilerplate it the same way, but you can in the sense of there's commonality in tenders, and I think a lot of people, they don't approach it like that. They approach it like, this is the questions, I need to answer them. But if you think about it, there's always going to be your team. So see if you have your team with their CVs, their experience, their projects, your case studies, and they're all on hand, you've done about 60% of the work. Then you've got your company information, which doesn't change. That's maybe 15% of the work. And then really what you're doing is tailoring those into the format they ask for, saying, like I was doing one 2 days ago, and it's like, right, we need 1,000 words on this, 1,000 words on that, and 500 words on this. So I paste in for all the other tenders, rewrite it as a kind of read through, and I go, oh my god, we're at like 2,600 words, that needs to go to 500. But it's really, really hard to be selective like that, because I'm thinking they're asking about SLA and uptime on hosting, and I'm like, but they probably really want to know this. So see if they'd even give me like 650 words, I could probably give them a more robust answer, but then it kind of like trains you to be more selective about what it is. And I think some people, they'll go, well, that doesn't matter, this is the way I want to respond, but they'll lose, because exactly what you said, if it said show your work and draw it inside the box, you can't then say, well, I like to do it outside and it's in the extra paperwork, but it's annoying to the person reviewing it, because they've got to review, say, 13 of these things. What about, see the process when you were doing it, did you reach out to the person that created the tender? So did you actually have dialogue with them, or did you just respond to
I had a lot of dialogue. I was a little bit worried about that, but then I was reaching out because initially there was a bit of information, and then from doing tenders in the past, this particular bit of information wasn't supplied. So I was like, why have they not supplied this part? Because they're now not known. So I actually reached out to them, and then they sent it on. And I'm not sure if other people did that same thing. And then obviously then I've got an advantage on a lot of other people. They should actually go, like, if it's sent to me, then it should get sent to everybody that's on the tender. They should actually add it in. But yeah, I reached out to them. I was very much like, you kind of have to do it, but you're trying to be kind of straight and like not be like, hi, how you doing, but just be like really kind of formal with it and all that sort of stuff, and ask for information and just extra parts. But it was, really, really good, and I think that really helped us. And that also, I think, in a weird way, was building a relationship with them, because if other people are not doing that, they're kind of going, oh well, Mark's kind of reached out to me and he's finding out that he's generally actually interested, and I'm already kind of getting a bit like a good feeling about this person.
Because they can't add it into the scoring, of course, because it has to be a transparent and fair opportunity. But psychologically, you're thinking that company's engaged. I think a lot of people miss that as a trick, and they forget that it is still a sale.
Yeah.
So it might be a tender, it might be some, it's more bureaucracy because it's maybe a council or something.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that person's a human being. They've
Yeah.
put all the work into writing that spec.
Yeah.
So even just being like kind of like really, really good spec, love the details you're asking for. We're going to put in a bid for this. Really, really interested in the work. Can I just check with you? Is this going to be used as this kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so if I'm reading it correctly, it looks like it's you've already got your e-learning, like your LMS system, your learning management system, but you're wanting us to create the course content. Is that correct? Or have you got another tender? So they might say, well, actually both of them are out for tender, and then I could say something like, would you consider a dual bid? Now, I wouldn't know that if I didn't speak to them.
Yeah.
Because I would just assume this is a tender.
Yeah.
Also, the clarification questions, as you say, generally when you ask clarification questions, they have to be published. You can be kind of coy or clever about your clarification questions. So I've even asked questions where I knew a lot of agencies won't be 100% comfortable about that SLA. Whereas I've done SLAs for large scale supermarkets where it's like literally it's like 5 minute response time and 4 hours resolution and stuff like that. So because you've seen that, you can actually scare a lot of your competitors away by asking a question going, so just to clarify, you would want a 24/7 global operation with support ticketing system, blah blah blah. And you know that a lot of people have seen that clarification come through their email, go, guys, I don't think we can support this. I mean, can Danny and Jimmy and Deborah actually support that? Like, that's a lot of work. Yeah. Or like, they've just asked for the price clarification and they've said, no, that's what it is for the 50 sites or the this or the that. And it might scare people away. It's kind of like a poker game or a boxing match. There's a certain bluffing in the sense of like, oh, he doesn't seem tired. Like, he didn't sit down at the end of the round. He's standing. He seems all right. Whereas I'm like, there's my water, And I think with tendering, it could be the same. I'm not saying like that's necessarily a strategy, but if you think about it, all things being fair or what it is, you can actually kind of put off a competitor where they go, that sounds like a company's been down this way before. They're asking all these really specific questions. But another thing you mentioned was the not being able to use it. I think that comes when you're playing your tenders wide. So it's like, see, putting your keyboards right down to like, we're only going to tender for your thing. I think it was like a marketing training or something. So you could just say, look, it's marketing training specifically. That's what I want to land. And they're only the opportunities we'll bid for. You'll start to see there's loads of commonality, and then even then you'll be going, oh, they keep asking for this one thing, but we don't do that. And then it's like, right, cool. But if I could cover that question, we could start bidding for more and more and more stuff.
It's exactly it, because like with me winning that tender, then I can actually use that as the next kind of case study.
It's
in the
copy
next
paste,
tender.
couple of changes.
So the market, who've you done the marketing training? This one, this. Oh right, fantastic, it's great. The one thing that I regret when winning that tender was I never asked for the score. They said to me when I won it, they were like, "You literally smashed it out the park. You'd won it by way more than the next one that was next to me." And that was the one thing, because I could actually probably use that in a case of like, this was my score from the last thing.
The thing is, you've still done well with it, so I would definitely keep your answers. And I've actually got like a area in my Google Drive that's like tender responses, and even when I lose them, exactly that way, I think people lose them and then they take the hump. It's like, oh, we lost the opportunity, we put all that effort in. Like, don't be like that. Just ask them, like, go, like, really appreciate, we've lost this opportunity here, but I want to get better. Where did we lose points on? And like, do you know what it was, Mark? It was your turnover. Or do you know what it was? It was, you didn't really give us a lot of detail around the SLA or the, and they're going to telegraph to you where these points are. And it's like, thank you so much for that. Really, really appreciate it. And it makes it stronger. But then you go and look at it and you say, right, we were kind of willy on that. We only really said 2 sentences about the SLA. And now when I look at it, it's 5 marks. That's like a fifth of the scoring. And it's kind of making sure you do that. Another kind of thing I do in tenders is I mimic the way they write about it rather than the way I want to write
That's
about
exactly
it.
what you need to do.
So see if it's like bullets and they say, here's a question, here's a question, here's a question, here's a question. I'll just take those bullets, paste them into a document and say, right, that bullet gets fleshed out in a paragraph, the next one a paragraph, and so on.
That's exactly what
you do. And then you're going like, right, cool, I know I've covered all the points in, but then I'm using the words they're using, so when they're reading it, they're going, he gets this. He gets this because he's using the words. So even if it's the incorrect industry term, it doesn't matter. whatever the client calls it is what we call it, because you have to. That's the way you've got to do it. And again, it's because of that. Like they'll see something and they think, oh, that's really cool, like machine learning and AI, and like if I'm reading that, I'm thinking this is nonsense. Like how are they going to get that? But then we ask them, it's like, can I just clarify, when you're saying AI, do you mean like a recommendation engine, like people who bought this also like this, or do you actually mean like algorithmic machine learning, like poring over the data and drawing extra kind of learning out from it and intelligently building up a, and you know for a fact they don't mean that. They say, oh no, it's just the recommendations, and you go like, imagine quoting for that and you're going, well, we're writing like a machine learning, you know, like the next matrix, you know. You're like, what's going on? But it's because I've heard that buzzword.
I think as well, one of the other tips that I would offer people is there is ways to market yourself. I know a tender is on like the Public Contract Scotland. A lot of these people, or whatever public tender website, wherever you are in the world, that these people are actually like searching, although they put this on, they are searching and they are looking for the person that they want to, you know, work with. So it's good to actually make sure that you get your case studies. When we talked about the case studies, make sure that you publish these case studies, what you've done. So if it is marketing training, we did this marketing training, it was really good, we've got this quote from this person, said that Mark was absolutely great, because then they start going, oh right, we were actually going to be doing a marketing training thing, and that sounded actually quite good. So they then almost build the tender round you.
A company like you. I want to kind of underline that for everybody listening. That is a belter. See what you just said there? A lot of people forget that these organisations are just the same as anyone else. So yes, it's more regulated, but it's the same deal. I've actually taken that a step further, where I've emailed all the council bodies and posted flyers and says, look, we do e-learning, we've done e-learning for X, Y and Z. If you have an e-learning project that comes up, please reach out to us, because we would be interested in partaking in the tender. Like, we would be interested in becoming part of the panel that tenders for this work. Now, if they then say, oh, that's great, we were going to do an e-learning academy, who's going to be in that? So actually what you find is, I worked in public sector for the other side, like building the software, like Public Contract Scotland and all this kind of stuff for my sins, right? But when you look at it, they're desperate for people to come on the platform. So let's say that they're looking for like somebody to build marketing training, right? And they're based up here, so they're thinking, right, I need a company that does this. They would much rather work with you than work with some company in Germany or some random company, or they've had 3 bids and it's like the same who's who, you know. It's like massive like KPMG or like these big conglomerates that have got consultancy sort of angles, and you're like, right, I get it, and they will win probably more than a fair share because they have bid writer teams and stuff. But the whole idea is to try and break that barrier of markets and say, look, we want a marketing Mavens or a hybrid anchor or a, you know, they want those companies to bring their knowledge in and support Scottish businesses. But I think that a lot of people are put off by tendering because they're thinking, you know, whether it's a real or perceived barrier, they're worrying about, oh, it's just a big process. You know, like, but is it really a big process? Is it really that much bigger than, you know, if you count your proposals as you also have to do a shit ton of networking, or podcasting, or videos, or pay-per-click, or, you know what I mean, like all that's cost as well. So if you actually break it down, you go, they're not that different in time-wise. Maybe it is a bit more, but if you look at the size of opportunity, now I don't know what you won your tender for, but generally speaking, they're higher priced contracts. Like, it's a big piece of work.
It's a big piece of work. It's like, it's good for the turnover. And you get paid. There's no issues getting paid. You get
That's
paid.
a great point.
Like,
you're not going to not get paid.
You're not going to get not paid.
May have a long payment term,
but
you're going to get paid. So it's like you could bank that all day. So let's say that you had 12 tenders, you could factor them, take the 5% hit, get that money in your bank, and you know that that's going to be paid because that money's already been set aside in a budget. Like, they can't lose that fund or take it away, kind of thing.
It's absolutely.
But it's huge, and I think for a startup company, it's hard to win the tenders without the kind of turnover like that. But like, we've won 2 tenders in our first month of trading, and you're thinking, like, even just those 2 tenders, you're talking about like the best part of $80,000 just for 2 bits of work. Now obviously they're massive projects, you know, they're long running 8, you know, probably 6 or 8 months kind of projects respectively. That's a decent chunk of work. But the point is, that's huge revenue for a startup. So I'm like, I would actually encourage people, learn that skill, learn how to tender, learn how to get yourself out there, rather than just ignoring this massive pot of money Because see, when you're doing that, there's people on the other side, and part of me actually is kind of happy that it's complicated, because then I'm thinking, well, there's less competition for me then.
Yeah.
Because if I'm willing to take that pain, then I'll get the reward when I win them. But you know yourself, you're like, oh, we lost that, can't believe we lost that, put so much work into it.
Yeah.
But how did you get around that? You put more irons in the fire.
And that's another thing as well, is ask why you failed. You know, that's one of, like, when I went through so many tenders, I then asked for feedback and says, like, listen, just looking for feedback. I know that we didn't win the tender, but can you tell us where we went wrong? And then they would go, well, when you were going through it, there was the partner evaluation that was missing, or the kind of go through. I remember one of the ones was like, it was just like case study or something like that. It wasn't quite, and I was like, right, great. So the next time, that's what I made sure they're included. So make sure that you include the things that you missed out on, and make sure that you can answer the question in that sort of way.
So if they ask anything, like literally, I've got a part of my process where I look and see, have we answered every single thing that they've asked? So everything they've mentioned, have we said something about it within the proposal? Yes, we have. Right, cool. Yeah. Everything that they've requested, documentation wise or insurances wise, like, have we done that? Yeah. And you're exactly right. It's like an exam, but it's like an exam that you're allowed to keep resetting and resetting and resetting. But then if you take the time to learn that, I think it's such a valuable thing. I would say that 3 years turnover thing is a bit of a pain. Yeah. So like from my perspective, I even considered buying an agency just so I could buy its turnover. So here's hypocrisy for you guys. So if I start a company and I'm the best, let's just say I'm something, right? So let's just say I'm the best e-learning provider in the world has ever seen. You know, like, you're Gandhi to e-learning, right? You're like the number one. But you're brand new, so your turnover's not there, you can't win the opportunity. So it doesn't matter how good you are at it, you're never going to win it. Whereas I could be the most average of average e-learning specialists that are out there. You know, I'm kind of like, so. You know, it's a bit wet flannel, you know, not that good. However, if I buy a company that has 3 years books and a tender for it, that company is going to actually edge out over the specialist. Yeah. Now that to me is broken, and you know, we could probably do a whole topic just on that, but I think it's important to do that in the sense of getting to that 3 years books. And if your company is either over 3 years or you're approaching that, even 2 years, really they should be starting to think about, right, tendering is a good lane. Why not do it? And even before then, partner up. Like, we could partner on tenders. You can meet people that would partner with you in a tender. You can have 5, 6, 7 different people that you go in with. And then you find, right, me and Mark win these kind of tenders, and me and Gary win these. And then they don't need to know that you're doing all that kind of stuff, but it kind of gives you more bites of the cherry. You'll learn your craft, and then you've more chance of winning. There's less work when you collaborate. So if we done a tender together, you're doing 50-50, but then you're sharing the proceeds of it. But then you're learning a skill as well as getting paid while you learn it.
There's good tendering strategies there, really, like especially if you are a startup. That's quite good. Have you got any other tendering tips, or you know, what the listeners would, if they were getting started in tendering or they were unsure what to do, like, what sort of tips you got?
A big one I would say is go no go. So it's like, I call it a gong, like, you know, King Kong gong, like, dong, the big drum. So what I do is I look at the opportunities that fit my list, right? So I basically print out the main document. Generally there's one that's a specification document, so there might be like 11 documents, but generally there's one that has here's what we want. So what I do quickly is I print that out, and then I go through it, and I'm basically just looking for my highlighters. So I have 3 colours: green, amber, and effectively red, but I don't think I've got a red highlighter, so I think it's pink, but whatever. So I go through them, and all I'm really looking for is, we can do that, we can do that, we can do that, need to check that, need to check that, need to check that, that's a showstopper, that's a showstopper. So it might be that. So let's say I've got 10 million, 10 million and 2 million for my insurances, but some of these tenders need like 15 and 10 and 6 or whatever, so that might rule me out. Now I know I could get the insurance in place, so that's amber, not red, but they might say we need 5-minute SLA globally for XYZ, so I'd need a team of 20 people to cover that. I don't have it, so it rules us out. They're asking for the e-learning to be translated into French or German. I don't have any French or German translators, so again it's amber, because I could potentially source a subcontractor or somebody to do that part. But there might be things that are just red, where it's like the person wants laptops and IT support, and I'm like, I don't do laptops and IT support, because people borrow things in the back of tenders where they're going, can't be bothered writing a full tender for this. See that one you're doing for the marketing learning, could you just add in like the price of 12 laptops? And then somebody like on your side would go, right, I've got all this written, and then you might be bothered to reach out to an IT company and saying, could you give me a price for this, just so I could tick that box in the tender. But really what you're looking for is, and I really try to ration it, I try to spend 15 minutes finding what are the big showstoppers, and then get really sort of savage about it and go, that's a no, that is a clear no, that's a maybe, that's a yes, and I'm sorting them. And then I'll start to look at it and say, what are the, you know, the things like that. So quickly I try to check, when is the tender due? And I don't tender for anything that's due in less than 3 weeks' time, because I know it's going to take me at least that amount of time to do it well. So if it's due tomorrow, it doesn't matter if it's perfect, I'm not going for it. Then I look for the clarifications, like how long have I got for the clarifications, and then I look for the location, where are they based? Ideally they're based here because of more chance of getting a local contract, but a lot of the ones I'm going for just now are Ireland or down south. That's normal. So I look at that, and then I look at the spec for the kind of showstoppers. And running that gong service is like a really good technique to use to really filter, like, is it worth going for, rather than sort of every single one of them. As business owners, we fall into that trap of, well, this is a chance to win a bit of business. I mean, I want to win them all, but you can't. Some of them are just not geared up for it.
I think people see the money, they see the turnover, go, oh wow, that's, you know, it's going to, you know, change our lives, you know, it's going to give us some amount of turnover. But the go-no-go is a really good technique, and I probably do something similar myself as well, like exactly the same, you know, with criteria. If it's you know, too short. One of my problems that I've got is, because we're an all-in-one marketing company and we do marketing training as well, there's so much that I can do. So you're going through, and then you're going,
gets you tempted to kind of go for more stuff then.
Because there's even like, we supply marketing automation software, and I'm like, can we do that? And then you find that you can't, like, because we resell the marketing automation software, we're not the marketing automation software provider, so we can't actually then bring that in. We could probably, you know, if we're doing marketing, we could probably bring it in as marketing on, but we couldn't be a supplier of it. For it. But so you're going through, and it takes a bit of time just to actually, you know, work out, because it takes a lot of time to do the tender. Well, once you do lots of them, it takes less time, but you know, you want to make sure that you get it right. So make sure that you're going to get a tender that's the kind of perfect fit that you know you're going to win. And that's what
the other one is going for something lower value. So see, like, try and go for a tender that's less than 50k, because see, like, it's easier to win a tender that's like, oh, we got a wee 25k out of that tender, or, you know, it's still good. Gets your beak wet, you know, gets you in there, you've learnt some experience, and it's like, cool, and now you've got some referenceability. Because some of them will be like that. Can you show us other likewise work you've done? It's much more impressive to say, you know, I did this for the MOD, this for the government of Montenegro, I've done this for XYZ, and they go, oh, they're all like us. You know, it's like we went for one that was like the Forestry Commission, and they were saying, have you worked with the Forestry Commission? It was one of the questions, and I'm like, well, what do we say to that? I mean, like, you know, guys, have you ever worked with like forestry or like anything like that? Like, just
I
anything,
used to climb
you know,
trees when I was young.
A guy used to climb trees, you know what I mean? They're kind of, but it gets ridiculous. But you know that if somebody's won work, let's say you'd won work like that before, you're going to get more points just because you go, well, actually, we worked with the Forestry Commission in England or Scotland, so they're going, oh, well, comparatively speaking, they kind of know about our, like, even though the reality is you'll never know about like the Tree Commission the same way as they know, but there's that opinion of like, oh, he's worked with colleges before, so it's a safe pair of hands.
Exactly.
Now ultimately the person that done that work might have left, but that's what I mean, it's not a perfect system, but I actually think tendering's a good thing. It is a good thing, and it brings transparency. It's just, it's a brutal process if you've not took the time to learn it. You know. Cool. Do you want to wrap that there then? Will we kind of round that up? What's the kind of one thing you would say to people then if they're looking at tendering? You know, should they look at it? What's the kind of one thing you would give them as advice?
The one thing that I would do is be aware that it's not as easy. It's very different to proposals, is what I kind of said at the very, very start. Is treat it almost like an assignment. They're asking you questions that you have to answer, and you brought it up when they provide their language, you're answering back in their language, you're answering their points, and it was a really, really good point. You have to have that certain process. So what I would say is like treat it a little bit different to proposals, and basically make sure that you kind of get your process right and make sure that you include the right sort of stuff. What about you? What's your business better for today?
I would say that although I've mentioned that it's like 3 years turnovers like the utopia, it doesn't make sense to start learning a skill when you qualify for it. So if you want to train to be a pro fighter, it takes you a few years to become pro. Start by collaborating, get in there with other companies that tender. Do you tender? Would you be interested in tendering together? Is there services I offer that you don't offer? Could we team up? You know, I don't do tendering, it's a lot of work. Yeah, but if we done it together, it's half the work. You know, we could share it. So we're sharing the proceeds of it, but we'll also do that. So that's giving you the kind of time and the experience. But then if you're winning the tenders, one, it's inflating your turnover, making the company larger, which is then dressing it for when you do eventually tender, that you're much more sharp with it. You can then choose, do you want to tender on your own? Do you want to have a bid writer? Do you want to pay a bid writer that's a consultant? Or do you want to continue doing collaborations, partnerships, consortiums, and going for it directly?
Yep.
You know, to me, it's like there's no sort of rules around you doing that en masse. You could be doing 30 different strategies in tendering if your company's big enough to handle it. Why not? You know what I mean? They're all just other lanes of getting business. So that would be mine, is really start early if you can and learn those kind of skills, because a lot of people avoid it, but that's also a brilliant way of getting business. And as market is saturated as this, you want those edges.
Instead of taking the wee like small bites, a really, really good point, really good business better. Okay, thank you very much everyone. So today we were talking about tendering, and tendering helps us kind of win business. It'd be really good to find out how you guys have won tenders, and you know what your experiences are as well, and share that, and we can actually share that with the Business Belters community, because we're all about trying to learn, trying to add value for each other as well. So thank you very much, and as always, please subscribe as you're all doing, and follow us on social media. So it's a goodbye from me.
It's goodbye for him.
Thank you everyone.
See you next week, guys.